Majestic 12 and the Secret Government. By William Cooper. Before Majestic 12. During the years following World War II, the government of the United States was confronted with a series of events which were to change beyond prediction its future and with it the future of humanity. These events were so incredible that they defied belief. A stunned President Truman and his top military commanders found themselves virtually impotent after having just won the most devastating and costly war in history. The United States had developed, used, and was the only nation on Earth in possession of the atomic bomb, which alone had the potential to destroy any enemy, and even the Earth itself. At that time the United States had the best economy, the most advanced technology, the highest standard of living, exerted the most influence, and fielded the largest and most powerful military forces in history. We can only imagine the confusion and concern when the informed elite of the United States government discovered that an alien spacecraft piloted by insect-like beings from a totally incomprehensible culture had crashed in the desert of New Mexico. Between January 1947 and December 1952, at least 16 crashed or downed alien craft. 65 alien bodies, and 1 live alien were recovered. An additional alien craft had exploded and nothing was recovered from that incident. Of these incidents, 13 occurred within the borders of the United States, not including the craft which disintegrated in the air. Of these 13, 1 was in Arizona, 11 were in New Mexico, and 1 was in Nevada. 3 occurred in foreign countries. Of those 1 was in Norway, and the last 2 were in Mexico. Sightings of UFOs were so numerous that serious investigation and debunking of each report became impossible utilizing the existing intelligence assets. How do you find this book? Any thoughts about the book or the author? Any suggestion for improvement? Please take a moment to share your thoughts in a comment. If you like it, share it with your friends who might enjoy it as well. Subscribe to keep in touch. Visit CompleteAudiobooks.com for more quality content. Alien Earth Presence. An alien craft was found on February 13, 1948 on a mesa near Aztec, New Mexico. Another craft was located on March 25, 1948 in Hart Canyon near Aztec, New Mexico. It was 100 feet in diameter. A total of 17 alien bodies were recovered from those 2 craft. Of even greater significance was the discovery of a large number of human body parts stored within both of these vehicles. A demon had reared its ugly head and paranoia quickly took hold of everyone then, in the know. The secret lid immediately became an above-top secret lid and was screwed down tight. The security blanket was even tighter than that imposed upon the Manhattan Project. In the coming years these events were to become the most closely guarded secrets in the history of the world. A special group of America's top scientists were organized and a program under the name Project Sign was created in December of 1947 to study the phenomenon. The whole nasty business was contained within the shroud of secrecy. Project Sign evolved into Project Grudge in December of 1948. A low-level collection and disinformation project named Blue Book was formed under Grudge. 16 volumes were to come out of Grudge, including the controversial Grudge 13, which I and Bill English saw, read, and revealed to the public. Blue teams were put together to recover the crashed discs and dead or alive aliens. The blue teams were later to evolve into alpha teams under Project Pounce. During these early years the United States Air Force and the CIA exercised complete control over the alien secret. In fact, the CIA was formed by Presidential Executive Order first as the Central Intelligence Group for the express purpose of dealing with the alien presence. Later the National Security Act, NSA, was established to oversee the intelligence community and especially the alien endeavor. A series of National Security Council memos and executive orders removed the CIA from the sole task of gathering foreign intelligence and slowly but thoroughly legalized direct action in the form of covert activities at home and abroad. Intelligence gathering. On December 9, 1947, Truman approved issuance of NSC-4, entitled Coordination of Foreign Intelligence Information Measures, at the urging of Secretaries Marshall, Forrestal, Patterson, and the Director of the State Department's Policy Planning Staff, Kennan. The Foreign and Military Intelligence, Book 1, Final Report of the Select Committee to Study Governmental Operations with Respect to Intelligence Activities. United States Senate, 94th Congress, 2nd Session, Report No. 94 to 755, April 26, 1976, page 49 states, this directive empowered the Secretary of State to coordinate overseas information activities designed to counter communism. A top-secret annex to NSC-4A, instructed the Director of Central Intelligence to undertake covert psychological activities in pursuit of the aims set forth in NSC-4. The initial authority given the CIA for covert operations under NSC-4A did not establish formal procedures for either coordinating or approving these operations. It simply directed the DCI to undertake covert actions and ensure, through liaison with state and defense, that the resulting operations were consistent with American policy. Later NSC 10/1 and NSC 10/2 were to supersede NSC-4 and NSC-4A and expand the covert abilities even further. The Office of Policy Coordination, OPC, was chartered to carry out an expanded program of covert activities. NSC 10/1 and NSC 10/2 validated illegal and extra-legal practices and procedures as being agreeable to the national security leadership. The reaction was swift. In the eyes of the intelligence community, no holes were barred. Under NSC 10/1 an executive coordination group was established to review, but not approve, covert project proposals. The CG was secretly tasked to coordinate the alien projects. NSC 10/1 and NSC 10/2 were interpreted to mean that no one at the top wanted to know about anything until it was over and successful. These actions established a buffer between the president and the information. It was intended that this buffer serve as a means for the president to deny knowledge if leaks divulged the true state of affairs. This buffer was used in later years for the purpose of effectively isolating succeeding presidents from the knowledge of the alien presence other than what the secret government and the intelligence community wanted them to know. NSC 10/2 established a study panel which met secretly and was made up of scientific minds of the day. The study panel was not called MJ-12. Another NSC memo, NSC 10/5 further outlined the duties of the study panel. These NSC memos and secret executive orders set the stage for the creation of MJ-12 only 4 years later. First victim of the cover-up. Secretary of Defense James Forrestal began to object to the secrecy. He was a very idealistic and religious man who believed that the public should be told. When he began to talk to leaders of the opposition party and leaders of Congress about the alien problem, he was asked to resign by Truman. He expressed his fears to many people and rightfully believed that he was being watched. This was interpreted by those who were ignorant of the facts as paranoia. Forrestal later was said to have suffered a mental breakdown and was admitted to Bethesda Naval Hospital. In fact, it was feared that Forrestal would begin to talk again and he had to be isolated and discredited. Sometime in the early morning of May 22, 1949, agents of the CIA tied a sheet around his neck, fastened the other end to a fixture in his room and threw James Forrestal out the window. The sheet tore and he plummeted to his death. He became one of the first victims of the cover-up. EBE. The live alien that had been taken from the 1947 Roswell crash was named EBE. The name had been suggested by Dr. Vannevar Bush and was short for extraterrestrial biological entity. EBE had a tendency to lie and for over a year would give only the desired answer to questions asked. Those questions which would have resulted in an undesirable answer went unanswered. At some point during the second year of captivity he began to open up and the information derived from EBE was startling, to say the least. This compilation of his revelations became the foundation of what would later be called the Yellow Book. Photographs were taken of EBE which, among others, I and Bill English were to view years later in Grudge 13. In late 1951 EBE became ill. Medical personnel had been unable to determine the cause of EBE's illness and had no background from which to draw. EBE's system was chlorophyll-based and he processed food into energy much the same as plants. Waste material was excreted the same as plants. It was decided that an expert on botany was called for. A botanist, Dr. Guillermo Mendoza, was brought in to try and help him recover. Dr. Mendoza worked to save EBE until mid-1952 when EBE died. Dr. Mendoza became an expert on alien biology. In a futile attempt to save EBE and to gain favor with this technologically superior alien race, the United States began broadcasting a call for help early in 1952 into the vast regions of space. The call went unanswered, but the project continued as an effort of good faith. Creation of the NSA. President Truman created the super-secret National Security Agency by secret executive order on November 4, 1952. Its primary purpose was to decipher the alien communications and language and establish a dialogue with the aliens. This most urgent task was a continuation of the earlier effort and was code-named Sigma. The secondary purpose of the NSA was to monitor all communications and emissions from any and all devices worldwide for the purpose of gathering intelligence, both human and alien, and to contain the secret of the alien presence. Project Sigma was successful. The NSA also maintains communications with the Luna base and other secret space programs. By executive order, the NSA is exempt from all laws which do not specifically name the NSA in the text of the law as being subject to that law. That means that if the agency is not spelled out in the text of any and every law passed by the Congress, it is not subject to that or those laws. The NSA now performs many other duties and in fact is the premier agency within the intelligence community. Today, NSA receives 75% of the monies allotted to the intelligence community. The old saying, "Where the money goes therein the power resides," is true. The DCI today is a figurehead maintained as a public ruse. The primary task of the NSA is still alien communications, but now includes other alien projects as well. President Truman had been keeping our allies, including the Soviet Union, informed of the developing alien problem since the Roswell recovery. This had been done in case the aliens turned out to be a threat to the human race. Plans were formulated to defend the Earth in case of invasion. Great difficulty was encountered in maintaining international secrecy. It was decided that an outside group was necessary to coordinate and control international efforts in order to hide the secret from the normal scrutiny of governments by the press. The result was the formation of a secret society known as the Bilderbergers. The headquarters of this group is in Geneva, Switzerland. The Bilderbergers evolved into a secret world government that now controls everything. The United Nations was then, and is now, an international joke. A new president. In 1953, a new man occupied the White House. He was a man used to a structured staff organization with a chain of command. His method was to delegate authority and rule by committee. He made major decisions but only when his advisors were unable to come to consensus. His normal method was to read through or listen to several alternatives and then approve one. Those who worked closely with him have stated that his favorite comment was, "Just do whatever it takes." He spent a lot of time on the golf course. This was not all unusual for a man who had been career Army with the ultimate position of Supreme Allied Commander during the war. A post which carried 5 stars along with it. This president was General of the Army Dwight David Eisenhower. During his first year in office, 1953, at least 10 more alien crashed disks were recovered along with 26 dead and 4 live aliens. Of the 10, 4 were found in Arizona, 2 in Texas, 1 in New Mexico, 1 in Louisiana, 1 in Montana, and 1 in South Africa. There were hundreds of sightings. Eisenhower knew that he had to wrestle and beat the alien problem. He knew that he could not do it by revealing the secret to the Congress. Early in 1953, the new president turned to his friend and fellow member of the Council on Foreign Relations, Nelson Rockefeller, for help with the alien problem. Eisenhower and Rockefeller began planning the secret structure of alien task supervision, which was to become a reality within 1 year. The idea for MJ-12 was thus born. It was Nelson's uncle Winthrop Aldrich who had been crucial in convincing Eisenhower to run for president. The whole Rockefeller family and with them the Rockefeller empire had solidly backed Ike. Asking Rockefeller for help with the alien problem was to be the biggest mistake Eisenhower ever made for the future of the United States and most probably all of humanity. Within 1 week of Eisenhower's election he had appointed Nelson Rockefeller chairman of a presidential advisory committee on government organization. Rockefeller was responsible for planning the reorganization of the government. New Deal programs went into one single cabinet position called the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. When the Congress approved the new cabinet position in April of 1953, Nelson was named to the post of Undersecretary to Oveta Culp Hobby. Heading for Earth. In 1953 astronomers discovered large objects in space which were moving towards Earth. It was first believed that they were asteroids. Later evidence proved that the objects could only be spaceships. Project Sigma intercepted alien radio communication. When the objects reached the Earth they took up a very high orbit around the equator. There were several huge ships, and their actual intent was unknown. Project Sigma, and a new project, Plato, through radio communications using the computer binary language, was able to arrange a landing that resulted in face-to-face contact with alien beings from another planet. Project Plato was tasked with establishing diplomatic relations with this alien race of space aliens. In the meantime a race of human-looking aliens contacted the U.S. government. This alien group warned us against the aliens that were orbiting the equator and offered to help us with our spiritual development. They demanded that we dismantle and destroy our nuclear weapons as the major condition. They refused to exchange technology, citing that we were spiritually unable to handle the technology which we then possessed. They believed that we would use any new technology to destroy each other. This race stated that we were on a path of self-destruction and we must stop killing each other, stop polluting the earth, stop raping the earth's natural resources, and learn to live in harmony. These terms were met with extreme suspicion, especially the major condition of nuclear disarmament. It was believed that meeting that condition would leave us helpless in the face of an obvious alien threat. We also had nothing in history to help with the decision. Nuclear disarmament was not considered to be within the best interest of the United States. The overtures were rejected. Later in 1954 the race of large-nosed gray aliens which had been orbiting the Earth landed at Holloman Air Force Base. A basic agreement was reached. This race identified themselves as originating from a planet round a red star in the constellation of Orion, which we call. They stated that their planet was dying and that at some unknown future time they wouldn't be able to survive there. This led to a second landing at Edwards Air Force Base. The historical event had been planned in advance and details of the treaty had been agreed upon. Eisenhower arranged to be in Palm Springs on vacation. On the appointed day the president was spirited away to the base and the excuse was given to the press that he was visiting a dentist. Formal treaty signed. President Eisenhower met with the aliens and a formal treaty between the alien nation and the United States of America was signed. We then received our first alien ambassador from outer space. His name and title was His Omnipotent Highness KRLLL, pronounced Krill. In the American tradition of disdain for royal titles, he was secretly called Original Hostage KRLLL. You should know that the alien flag is known as the trilateral insignia. It is displayed on their craft and worn on their uniforms. Both of these landings and the second meeting were filmed. The films exist today. The treaty stated, the aliens would not interfere in our affairs and we would not interfere in theirs. We would keep their presence on Earth a secret. They would furnish us with advanced technology and would help us in our technological development. They would not make any treaty with any other Earth nation. They could abduct humans on a limited and periodic basis for the purpose of medical examination and monitoring of our development, with the stipulation that the humans would not be harmed, would be returned to their point of abduction. That the humans would have no memory of the event, and that the alien nation would furnish MJ-12 a list of all human contacts and abductees on a regularly scheduled basis. It was agreed that each nation would receive the ambassador of the other for as long as the treaty remained in force. It was further agreed that the alien nation and the United States would exchange 16 personnel each to the other with the purpose of learning, each of the other. Underground bases. The alien guests would remain on Earth and the human guests would travel to the alien point of origin for a specified period of time then return, at which point a reverse exchange would be made. It was also agreed that bases would be constructed underground for the use of the alien nation and that 2 bases would be constructed for the joint use of the alien nation and the United States government. Exchange of technology would take place in the jointly occupied bases. These alien bases would be constructed under Indian reservations in the Four Corners area of Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado. And one would be constructed in Nevada in the area known as S4, located approximately 7 miles south of the western border of Area 51. All alien bases are under complete control of the Department of Naval Intelligence and all personnel who work in these complexes receive their checks from the Navy. Construction of the bases began immediately but progress was slow until large amounts of money were made available in 1957. Work continued on the Yellow Book. Area 51 and S4. Project Redlight was formed and experimentation in test-flying alien aircraft was begun in earnest. A super top-secret facility was built at Groom Lake in Nevada in the midst of the weapons test range. It was code-named Dreamland. The installation was placed under the Department of the Navy and clearance of all personnel required, Q, clearance as well as executive, presidential, approval. This is ironic due to the fact that the President of the United States does not have clearance to visit the site. The alien base and exchange of technology actually took place in an area known as S4. Area S4 was code-named the Dark Side of the Moon. The Army was tasked to form a super-secret organization to furnish security for all alien task projects. This organization became the National Reconnaissance Organization based at Fort Carson, Colorado. The specific teams trained to secure the projects were called Delta. A second project code named Snowbird was promulgated to explain away any sightings of the red light crafts as being Air Force experiments. The Snowbird crafts were manufactured using conventional technology and were flown for the press on several occasions. Project Snowbird was also used to debunk legitimate public sightings of alien craft, UFOs. Project Snowbird was very successful and reports from the public declined steadily until recent years. Secret funding. A multi-million-dollar secret fund was organized and kept by the military office of the White House. This fund was used to build over 75 deep underground facilities. Presidents who asked were told the fund was used to build deep underground shelters for the president in case of war. Only a few were built for the president. Millions of dollars were funneled through this office to MJ-12 and then out to the contractors and was used to build top-secret alien bases as well as top-secret deep underground military bases, and facilities promulgated by Alternative 2. Throughout the nation. President Johnson used this fund to build a movie theater and pave the road on his ranch. He had no idea of its purpose. The secret White House Underground Construction Fund was set up in 1957 by President Eisenhower. The funding was obtained from Congress under the guise of construction and maintenance of secret sites where the president could be taken in case of military attack, presidential emergency sites. The sites are literally holes in the ground, deep enough to withstand a nuclear blast and are outfitted with state-of-the-art communications equipment. To date there are more than 75 sites spread around the country which were built using money from this fund. The Atomic Energy Commission has built at least an additional 22 underground sites. The location and everything to do with these sites were and are considered and treated as top secret. The money was and is in control of the military office of the White House, and was and is laundered through a circuitous web that even the most knowledgeable spy or accountant cannot follow. As of 1980 only a few at the beginning and end of this web knew what the money was for. At the beginning were Representative George Mahone, of Texas, and the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee and of its Defense Subcommittee, and Representative Robert Sykes, of Florida. Chairman of the House Appropriations Military Construction Subcommittee. Today it is rumored that House Speaker Jim Wright controls the money in Congress and that a power struggle is underway to remove him. At the end of the line were the President, MJ-12, the Director of the Military Office and a commander at the Washington Navy Yard. The money was authorized by the Appropriation Committee, who allocated it to the Department of Defense as a top-secret item in the Army construction program. The Army, however, could not spend it and in fact did not even know what it was for. Authorization to spend the money was in reality given to the Navy. The money was channeled to the Chesapeake Division of the Navy engineers, who did not know what it was for either. Not even the commanding officer, who was an admiral, knew what the fund was to be used for. Only one man, a Navy commander, who was assigned to the Chesapeake Division but in reality was responsible only to the military office of the White House, knew of the actual purpose, amount, and ultimate destination of the top-secret fund. The total secrecy surrounding the fund meant that almost every trace of it could be made to disappear by the very few people who controlled it. There has never been and most likely never will be an audit of this secret money. Large amounts of money were transferred from the top-secret fund to a location at Palm Beach, Florida that belongs to the Coast Guard called Peanut Island. The island is adjacent to property which was owned by Joseph Kennedy. The money was said to have been used for landscaping and general beautification. Some time ago a TV news special on the Kennedy assassination told of a Coast Guard officer transferring money in a briefcase to a Kennedy employee across this property line. Could this have been a secret payment to the Kennedy family for the loss of their son John F. Kennedy? The payments continued through the year 1967 and then stopped. The total amount transferred is unknown and the actual use of the money is unknown. Meanwhile, Nelson Rockefeller changed positions again. This time he was to take C.D. Jackson's old position, which had been called the Special Assistant for Psychological Strategy. With Nelson's appointment the name was changed to the Special Assistant for Cold War Strategy. This position would evolve over the years into the same position Henry Kissinger was ultimately to hold under President Nixon. Officially he was to give advice and assistance in development of increased understanding and cooperation among all peoples. The official description was a smoke screen for security. He was the presidential coordinator for the intelligence community. In his new post, Rockefeller reported directly, and only, to the president. He attended meetings of the Cabinet, the Council on Foreign Economic Policy, and the National Security Council, which was the highest policy-making body in the government. Nelson Rockefeller was also given a second important job as the head of a secret unit called the Planning Coordination Group, which was formed under NSC 5412/1 in March of 1955. The group consisted of different ad hoc members depending on the subject of the agenda. The basic members were Rockefeller, a representative of the Department of State, and the Director of Central Intelligence. It was soon called the 3412 Committee of the Special Group. NSC 5412/1 established the rule that covert operations were subject to approval by an executive committee, whereas in the past these operations were initiated solely on the authority of the Director of Central Intelligence. Founding of MJ-12. By Secret Executive Memorandum, NSC 5410. Eisenhower had preceded NSC 5412/1 in 1954 to establish a permanent committee, not ad hoc, to be known as Majority 12, MJ-12, to oversee and conduct all covert activities concerned with the alien question. NSC 5412/1 was created to explain the purpose of these meetings when Congress and the press became curious. Majority 12 was made up of Nelson Rockefeller, the Director of the CIA Alan Welsh Dulles, the Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, the Secretary of Defense Charles E. Wilson, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Admiral Arthur W. Radford, the Director of the FBI J. Edgar Hoover, and 6 men from the Executive Committee of the Council on Foreign Relations known as the Wise Men. These men were all members of a secret society of scholars that called themselves the Jason Society, or the Jason Scholars, who recruited their members from the Skull and Bones, and the Scroll and Key societies of Harvard and Yale. The Wise Men were key members of the Council on Foreign Relations. There were 12 members including the first 6 from government positions, thus majority 12. This group was made up over the years of the top officers and directors of the Council on Foreign Relations and later the Trilateral Commission. Gordon Dean, George Bush, and Zbigniew Brzezinski were among them. The most important and influential of the wise men who served on MJ-12 were John McCloy, Robert Lovett, Averell Harriman, Charles Bolin, George Kennan, and Dean Acheson. It is significant that President Eisenhower as well as the first 6 MJ-12 members from the government were also members of the Council on Foreign Relations. Thorough researchers will soon discover that not all of the wise men attended Harvard or Yale, and not all of them were chosen for Skull and Bones or Scroll and Key membership during their college years. You will be able to quickly clear up this mystery by obtaining the book, The Wise Men, by Walter Isaacson and Evan Thomas, Simon & Schuster, New York. Under illustration number 9 in the center of the book you will find the caption, Lovett with the Yale unit, above far right, and on the beach his initiation into Skull and Bones came at an air base near Dunkirk. I have found that members were chosen on an ongoing basis by invitation based upon merit post-college and was not confined to only Harvard or Yale attendees. A chosen few were later initiated into the Jason Society. They are all members of the Council on Foreign Relations and at that time were known as the Eastern Establishment. This should give you a clue to the far-reaching and serious nature of these most secret college societies. The Jason Society is alive and well today but now includes members of the Trilateral Commission as well. The Trilateralists existed secretly several years before 1973. The name of the Trilateral Commission was taken from the alien flag known as the Trilateral Insignia. Majority 12 was to survive right up to the present day. Under Eisenhower and Kennedy it was erroneously called the 8412 Committee, or more correctly, the Special Group. In the Johnson administration it became the 303 Committee, because the name 5412 had been compromised in the book, The Secret Government. Actually NSC 5412/1 was leaked to the author to hide existence of NSC 5410. Under Nixon, Ford, and Carter it was called the 40 Committee, and under Reagan, it became the PI 40 Committee. Over all those years only the name changed. Deception and mutilations. By 1955 it became obvious the aliens had deceived Eisenhower and had broken the treaty. Mutilated humans were being found along with mutilated animals all across the United States. It was suspected that the aliens were not submitting a complete list of human contacts and abductees to MJ-12 and it was suspected that not all abductees had been returned. The Soviet Union was suspected of interacting with them and this proved to be true. It was learned that the aliens had been and were then manipulating masses of people through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion. After several Air Force combat air engagements with alien craft it also became apparent that our weapons were no match against them. In November 1955, NSC 5412/2 was issued establishing a study committee to explore all factors which are involved in making and implementing a foreign policy in the nuclear age. This was only a blanket of snow that covered the real subject of study, the alien question. The Study Group. By Secret Executive Memorandum, NSC 5411 in 1954, President Eisenhower had commissioned the study group to examine all the facts, evidence, lies, and deception and discover the truth of the alien question. NSC 5412/2 was only a cover that had become necessary when the press began inquiring as to the purpose of regular meetings of such important men. The first meetings began at Quantico Marine Base. The study group was made up of 35 members of the Council on Foreign Relations. Secret scholars known as the Jason Society of the Jason Scholars. Dr. Edward Teller was invited to participate, Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski was the study director for the first 18 months. Dr. Henry Kissinger was chosen as the group's study director for the second 18 months. Nelson Rockefeller was a frequent visitor during the study. Study group members. Gordon Dean, chairman. Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski, study director, first phase. Dr. Henry Kissinger, study director, second phase. Dr. Edward Teller. Major General Richard C. Lindsay. Hanson W. Baldwin. Lloyd V. Berkner. Frank C. Nash. Paul H. Nitze. Charles P. Noyes. Frank Pace, Jr. James A. Perkins. Don K. Price. David Rockefeller. Oscar M. Rubhausen. Lieutenant General James M. Gavin. Carol P. Haskins. James T. Hill, Jr. Joseph E. Johnson. Mervyn J. Kelly. Frank Altschul. Hamilton Fish Armstrong. Major General James McCormick, Jr. The second phase meetings were also held at the Marine Base at Quantico, Virginia, and the group became known as Quantico II. Nelson Rockefeller built a retreat somewhere in Maryland which could only be reached by air for MJ-12 and the study committee so that they could meet away from public scrutiny. This secret meeting place is known by the code name, the Country Club. Complete living, eating, recreation, library, and meeting facilities exist at the location. The study group was publicly closed in the later months of 1958, and Henry Kissinger published what was officially termed the results in 1957 as Nuclear Weapons and Foreign Policy, by Henry A. Kissinger, published for the Council on Foreign Relations by Harper & Brothers, New York. In truth, the manuscript had already been 80% written while Kissinger was at Harvard. The study group continued veiled in secrecy. A clue to the seriousness Kissinger attached to the study can be found in statements by his wife and friends. Many of them stated that Henry would leave home early each morning and return late each night without speaking to anyone or responding to anyone. It seemed as if he were in another world which held no room for anyone else. These statements are very revealing. The revelations of the alien presence and actions during the study must have been a great shock. Henry Kissinger was definitely out of character during times surrounding these meetings. He would never again be affected in this manner no matter the seriousness of any subsequent event. On many occasions he would work very late into the night after having already put in a full day. This behavior eventually led to divorce. A major finding of the alien study was that the public could not be told, as it was believed that this would most certainly lead to economic collapse, collapse of the religious structure, and national panic which would lead into anarchy. Secrecy thus continued. An offshoot of this finding was that if the public could not be told, then the Congress could not be told, thus funding for the projects and research would have to come from outside the government. In the meantime, money was to be obtained from the military budget and from CIA confidential non-appropriated funds. Genetic experimentation. Another major finding was the aliens were using humans and animals for a source of glandular secretions, enzymes, hormonal secretions, blood, and in horrible genetic experiments. The aliens explained these actions as necessary to their survival. They stated that their genetic structure had deteriorated and that they were no longer able to reproduce. They stated that if they were unable to improve their genetic structure, their race would soon cease to exist. We looked upon their explanations with extreme suspicion. Since our weapons were literally useless against the aliens, MJ-12 decided to continue friendly diplomatic relations with them until such time as we were able to develop a technology which would enable us to challenge them on a military basis. Overtures would have to be made to the Soviet Union, and other nations, to join forces for the survival of humanity. In the meantime, plans were developed to research and construct two weapons systems using conventional and nuclear technology which would hopefully bring us to parity. The results of the research were projects Joshua and Excalibur. Joshua was a weapon captured from the Germans which at that time was capable of shattering 4-inch thick armor plate at a range of 2 miles using low-frequency sound waves. And it was believed that this weapon would be effective against the alien craft and beam weapons. Excalibur was a weapon carried by missile not to exceed 30,000 feet AGL, not to deviate from designated target more than 50 meters, would penetrate 1,000 meters of tufa hard-packed soil such as that found in New Mexico. Would carry a 1 megaton warhead, and was intended for use in destroying the aliens in their underground bases. Joshua was developed successfully but never used to my knowledge. Excalibur was not pushed until recent years, and now there is an unprecedented effort to develop this weapon. The events at Fatima in the early part of the century were scrutinized. On suspicion that it was alien manipulation, an intelligence operation was put into motion to penetrate the secrecy surrounding the event. The United States utilized its Vatican moles that had been recruited and nurtured during World War II and soon obtained the entire Vatican study, which included the prophecy. This prophecy stated that if man did not turn from evil and place himself at the feet of Christ, the planet would self-destruct and the events described in the Book of Revelations would indeed come to pass. It stated that a child would be born who would unite the world with a plan for world peace and a false religion beginning in 1992. By 1995 the people would discern that he was evil and was indeed the Antichrist. World War III would begin in the Middle East in 1995 with an invasion of Israel by a united Arab nation using conventional weapons, which would culminate in a nuclear holocaust in the year 1999. Between 1999 and 2003 most of the life on this planet would suffer horribly and die as a result. The return of Christ would occur in the year 2011. When the aliens were confronted with this finding, they confirmed that it was true. The aliens explained that they had created us through hybridization and had manipulated the human race through religion, Satanism, witchcraft, magic, and the occult. They further explained that they were capable of time travel and the events would indeed come to pass. Later exploitation of alien technology by the United States and the Soviet Union utilizing time travel confirmed the prophecy. The aliens showed a hologram which they claimed was the actual crucifixion of Christ, which the government filmed. We did not know whether to believe them or not. Were they using genuine religions to manipulate us, or were they indeed the source of our religions with which they had been manipulating us all along? Or was this the beginning of the genuine end times and the return of Christ which had been predicted in the Bible? No one knew the answer. A symposium was held in 1957 which was attended by some of the greatest scientific minds then living. They reached the conclusion that by or shortly after the year 2000 the planet would self-destruct due to increased population and man's exploitation of the environment without any help from God or the aliens. Alternatives 1, 2, and 3. By secret executive order of President Eisenhower, the Jason scholars were ordered to study this scenario and make recommendations called Alternatives 1, 2, and 3. Alternative 1 was to use nuclear devices to blast holes in the stratosphere from which the heat and pollution would escape into space. Change the human cultures from that of exploitation into cultures of environmental protection. Of the three, this was decided to be the least likely to succeed due to the inherent nature of man and the additional damage the nuclear explosions would themselves create. Alternative 2 was to build a vast network of underground cities and tunnels in which a select representation of all cultures and occupations would survive and carry on the human race. The rest of humanity would be left to fend for themselves on the surface of the planet. Alternative 3 was to exploit the alien and conventional technology in order for a select few to leave the Earth and establish colonies in outer space. I am not able to confirm nor deny the existence of batch consignments of human slaves which would be used for the manual labor in the effort as part of the plan. The Moon, code-named Adam, would be the object of primary interest, followed by the planet Mars, code-named Eve. As a delaying action, all three alternatives included birth control, sterilization, and the introduction of deadly microbes to control or slow the growth of the Earth's population. AIDS is only one result of these plans. There are others. It was decided since the population must be reduced and controlled that it would be in the best interest of the human race to rid ourselves of the undesirable elements of our society. The joint U.S. and Soviet leadership dismissed Alternative 1, but ordered work to begin on Alternative 2 and 3 virtually at the same time. In 1959 the RAND Corporation hosted a deep underground construction symposium. In the symposium report, machines are pictured and described which could bore a tunnel 45 feet in diameter at the rate of 5 feet per hour. It also displays pictures of huge tunnels and underground vaults containing what appear to be complex facilities and possibly even cities. It appears that the previous 5 years of all-out underground construction had made significant progress by that time. The ruling powers decided that one means of funding the alien-connected and other black market projects was to corner the illegal drug market. A young ambitious member of the Council on Foreign Relations was approached. His name is George Bush, who at the time was president and CEO of Zapata Oil based in Texas. Zapata Oil was experimenting with the new technology of offshore drilling. It was correctly thought that the drugs could be shipped from South America to the offshore platforms by fishing boat, where it would then be taken to shore by the normal transportation used for supplies and personnel. By this method, no customs or law enforcement agency would subject the cargo to search. George Bush agreed to help and organized the operation in conjunction with the CIA. The plan worked better than anyone had thought and has since expanded worldwide, and there are now many other methods of bringing the illegal drugs into the country. It must always be remembered, though, that George Bush began sale of drugs to our children. The CIA now controls all the world's illegal drug markets. The real space program. The official space program was boosted by President Kennedy in his inaugural address when he mandated that the United States put a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Although innocent in its conception, this mandate enabled those in charge to funnel vast amounts of money into black projects and conceal the real space program from the American people. A similar program in the Soviet Union served the same purpose. In fact, a joint alien, United States, and Soviet Union base already existed on the moon at the very moment Kennedy spoke the words. On May 22, 1962, a space probe landed on Mars and confirmed the existence of an environment which could support life. Not long afterward, the construction of a colony on the planet Mars began in earnest. Today, cities exist on Mars populated by specifically selected people from different cultures and occupations taken from all over the Earth. A public charade of antagonism between the Soviet Union and the United States has been maintained over all these years in order to fund projects in the name of national defense, when in fact we are the closest allies. Kennedy assassination. At some point, President Kennedy discovered portions of the truth concerning the drugs and the aliens. He issued an ultimatum in 1963 to MJ-12. President Kennedy assured them that if they didn't clean up the drug problem, he would. He informed MJ-12 that he intended to reveal the presence of aliens to the American people within the following year and ordered a plan developed to implement his decision. President Kennedy was not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and knew nothing of Alternative 2 or Alternative 3. Internationally, the operations were supervised by MJ-12 and in the Soviet Union by its sister organization. President Kennedy's decision struck fear into the hearts of those in charge. His assassination was ordered by the Policy Committee, and the order was carried out by agents of MJ-12 in Dallas. President John F. Kennedy was murdered by the Secret Service agent who drove his car in the motorcade, and the act is plainly visible in the film. Watch the driver and not Kennedy when you view the film. All of the witnesses who were close enough to the car to see William Greer shoot Kennedy were themselves all murdered within the next 2 years of the event. The Warren Commission was a farce, and Council on Foreign Relations members made up the majority of its panel. They succeeded in snowing the American people. Many other patriots who attempted to reveal the alien secret have also been murdered throughout the intervening years. During the era of the United States' initial space exploration and the moon landings, every launch was accompanied by alien craft. A moon base dubbed Luna was sighted and filmed by the Apollo astronauts. Domes, spires, tall round structures which look like silos, huge T-shaped mining vehicles which left stitch-like tracks in the lunar surface, and extremely large as well as small alien craft appear in the photographs. It is a joint United States, Russian and alien base. The space program is a farce and unbelievable waste of money. Alternative 3 is a reality and is not at all science fiction. Most of the Apollo astronauts were severely shaken by this experience, and their lives and subsequent statements reflect the depth of the revelation and the effect of the muzzle order which followed. They were ordered to remain silent or suffer extreme penalty, death, which was termed an expediency. One astronaut actually did talk to the British producers of the TV expose, Alternative 3, confirming many of the allegations. In the book, Alternative 003, the pseudonym, Bob Groden, was used in place of the astronaut's identity. It was also stated that he committed suicide in 1978. This cannot be validated by any source, and I believe that several so-called facts in the book are disinformation. I firmly believe that this disinformation is a result of pressure put upon authors and is meant to nullify the effect upon the populace of the British TV expose entitled, Alternative 3. The headquarters of the international conspiracy is in Geneva, Switzerland. The ruling body is made up of representatives of the governments involved as well as the executive members of the group known as the Bilderbergers. Meetings are held by the Policy Committee, when necessary on a nuclear submarine beneath the polar ice cap. The secrecy is such that this was the only method which would ensure that the meetings would not be bugged. I can say that the book is at least 70% true from my own knowledge and the knowledge of my sources. I believe that the disinformation was an attempt to compromise the British TV expose with information which could be proven false, just as the Eisenhower briefing document was released here in the US. Under the contingency plan, Majestic 12, and which can also be proven false. Alien spacecraft. Since our interaction with the aliens began, we have come into possession of technology beyond our wildest dreams. A craft named Aurora exists at Area 51 which makes regular trips into space. It is a one-stage ship called a TAV, Transatmospheric Vehicle, and it can take off from the ground using a 7-mile runway, go into high orbit, return on its own power, and land on the same runway. We currently have and fly atomic-powered alien-type craft at Area S-4 in Nevada. Our pilots have made interplanetary voyages in these craft and have been to the Moon, Mars, and other planets aboard these craft. We have been lied to about the true nature of the Moon, the planets Mars and Venus, and the real state of technology that we possess today at this very moment. There are areas on the Moon where plant life grows and even changes color with the seasons. This seasonal effect is because the Moon does not, as claimed, always present the exact same side to the Earth or the Sun. There is an area that wobbles in and out of darkness on a seasonal basis, and it is near this area that the plant life grows. The Moon does have a few man-made lakes and ponds upon its surface, and clouds have been observed and filmed in its atmosphere. It possesses a gravitational field, and man can walk upon its surface without a space suit, breathing from an oxygen bottle after undergoing decompression the same as any deep-sea diver. I have seen the photographs, and some of them were actually published in the book, We Discovered Alien Bases on the Moon, by Fred Steckling. In 1969 a confrontation broke out between the human scientists and the aliens at the Dulce Underground Lab. The aliens took many of our scientists hostage. Delta forces were sent to free them but were no match against the alien weapons. 66 of our people were killed during this action. As a result, we withdrew from all joint projects for at least 2 years. A reconciliation eventually took place, and once again we began to interact. Today the alliance continues. Nixon forced to resign. When the Watergate scandal broke, President Nixon had intended to ride out the storm confident that he could not be impeached. MJ-12, however, had a different agenda. The intelligence community rightfully concluded that an impeachment trial would open up the files and bare the awful secrets to the public eye. Nixon was ordered to resign. He refused, and so the first military coup ever to take place in the United States was promulgated. The Joint Chiefs of Staff sent a top-secret message to the commanders of all U.S. armed forces throughout the world. It stated, upon receipt of this message you will no longer carry out any orders from the White House. Acknowledge receipt. This message was sent a full 5 days before Nixon conceded and announced publicly that he would resign. I personally saw this message. When I asked my commanding officer what he would do, as obviously the order violated the Constitution, I was told, "I guess I will wait to see if any orders come from the White House and then I will decide." I did not see any communication from the White House, but that does not mean that none was sent. During all the years that this has been happening, the Congress and the American people have seemed to know instinctively that something was not right. When the Watergate scandal surfaced, they jumped on the bandwagon and everyone thought that the agencies would be cleaned out. President Ford organized the Rockefeller Commission to do the job. At least that is what everyone thought. His real purpose was to head off the Congress and keep the cover-up going. Nelson Rockefeller, who headed the commission investigating the intelligence community, was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and was the one who helped Eisenhower build the MJ-12 power structure. Rockefeller uncovered only enough to keep the hounds at bay. He threw the Congress few bones and the cover-up rolled merrily along as always. Later Senator Church would conduct the famous Church hearings. He also was a prominent member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he only repeated the Rockefeller Act. Again the cover-up prevailed. When Iran-Contra came along, we thought this time it had to come gushing out. Wrong again. Despite mountains of documents that pointed to drug smuggling and other hidden monsters, the cover-up sailed through. Congress even seemed to go out of its way to duck the issues that were just under the surface. Could it be that Congress knows the whole thing and won't touch it? Are they among the select who have been picked for the Mars colony when the Earth begins to destruct? I cannot even begin to outline the entire financial empire controlled by the CIA, the NSA, and the Council on Foreign Relations that controls and launders money from drugs and intelligence community proprietary ventures, but I can tell you the little that I know. The amount of money is beyond anything you can imagine and is hidden in a vast networks of banks and holding companies. You should first begin to look at the J. Henry Schroeder Banking Corporation, the Schroeder Trust Company, Schroders Limited, London, Helbert Wag Holdings, Ltd., J. Henry Schroeder Wag & Company. Ltd., Schroeder Gerbruder & Company, Germany, Schroeder Munchmeyer Hengst & Company, Castle Bank and its holding companies, the Asian Development Bank, and the Nugan Hand Octopus of banks and holding companies. Contingency Plan. A contingency plan was formulated by MJ-12 to throw everyone off the trail should they come close to the truth. The plan was known as Majestic 12. It was implemented with the release by Moore, Shandera, and Friedman of the purported genuine Eisenhower briefing document. The document is a fraud. The document lists the executive order as number 092447. A number which does not exist and will not exist for quite a long time at the present rate. Truman wrote executive orders in the 9,000 range, Eisenhower wrote in the 10,000 range, Ford was up to the 11,000 bracket, and Reagan got only into the 12,000 numbers. Executive orders are numbered consecutively, no matter who occupies the White House, for reasons of continuity, record-keeping, and to prevent confusion. The executive order is only one of several fatal flaws contained within the document. The plan so far has thrown the entire research community off the trail for several years and has resulted in the wasted expenditure of money looking for information which does not exist. It resulted in a total waste of a grant by the Fund for UFO Research of $16,000 which was given to Stanton Friedman to research the information. Many thousands of man-hours have gone into looking for a red herring. If you doubt the secret government's ability to run you through the rose garden, you had better think again. Another contingency plan is in force and is working upon you today. It is the plan to prepare the public for eventual confrontation with an alien race. The public is being bombarded with movies, radio, advertising, and TV depicting almost every aspect of the true nature of the alien presence. This includes the good and the bad. Look around and pay attention. The aliens are planning to make their presence known and the government is preparing you for it so that there will be no panic. The worst contingency plan has also been implemented and is at work right now. For many years now they have been importing drugs and selling them to the people, and mainly the poor and minorities. Social welfare programs were put into place to create a dependent non-working element of our society. They began to remove the social welfare programs in order to develop a large criminal class that did not exist in the 50s and early 60s. They encouraged the manufacture and importation of deadly military firearms for the criminal element to use. This was intended to foster a feeling of insecurity which would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms. Incidents were to be staged to speed up the process. By using drugs and hypnosis in a process called Orion on mental patients, the CIA inculcated the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards and inflame the anti-gun lobby. This plan is well underway and so far is working as planned. This plan must not succeed. Martial law and concentration camps. Due to the wave of crime sweeping the nation, they will convince the American people a state of anarchy exists within the major cities. They are now building their case almost nightly on TV and daily in newspapers. When public opinion has been won over to this idea, they intend to state that a terrorist group armed with a nuclear weapon has entered the United States and that they plan to detonate this device in one of our cities. The government will then suspend the Constitution and declare martial law. The secret alien army of implanted humans and all dissidents, which translated into anyone they choose, will be rounded up and will be placed in concentration camps which already exist throughout the country. They are each 1 mile square. Are the people whom they intend to place in these concentration camps destined to make the reported batch consignments of slave labor needed by the space colonies? The media, radio, TV, newspapers, and computer networks will be nationalized and seized. Anyone who resists will be taken or killed. This entire operation was rehearsed by the government and military in 1984 under the code name REX-84, and it went off without a hitch. When these events have transpired, the secret government and/or alien takeover will be complete. Your freedom will never be returned and you will live in slavery for the remainder of your life. You had better wake up and you had better do it now. Secret government agents. Phil Klass is an agent of the CIA, and this was stated in the documents I saw between 1970 and 1973. One of his jobs as an aviation expert was to debunk everything to do with UFOs. All military commanders were instructed to call him to gain information on how to debunk and/or explain UFO contacts and/or sightings to the public and/or press if and when the need arose. William Moore, Jamie Shandera, and Stanton Friedman are either witting, with knowledge, or unwitting, being used without knowledge, agents of the secret government. I prefer to believe that they are unwitting, although William Moore's reported us of a Defense Investigation Service ID card and his reported self-confession to Lee Graham that he was an agent of the government makes me seriously doubt it. If the reports are true. Lee Graham called me at my home, and when asked, he confirmed that Moore had indeed done this. Stanton Friedman has told me and many others that years ago he helped develop a nuclear reactor to power an aircraft that was the size of a basketball, was clean, turned out hydrogen, and worked like a dream. His words, not mine. The only fuel which could go into such an engine and produce hydrogen as a byproduct is water. The only place in the universe at that time to get such technology was from the aliens. Is he really unwitting? I do not know. He was a member of the Moore, Shandera, and Friedman research team, and it was they who implemented the Majestic 12 contingency plan. In the documents which I saw between 1970 and 1973, names of individuals were listed who were to be targeted for recruitment in order that the contingency plan known as Majestic 12 could be introduced to the public by persons known and respected by the public. Bruce McCabe, Stanton Friedman, and William Moore were among those listed. I do not know that the subsequent events do not seem to indicate that Bruce McCabe is involved, but the actions of Stanton Friedman and William Moore are highly suspect. I know that all the major UFO research organizations were targeted for infiltration and control by the secret government, just as NICAP was infiltrated and controlled. I believe that these efforts have been successful. It is very possible that the major UFO publications are also controlled. Majestic 12 today. Today, MJ-12 still exists and operates just as it always has. It is made up of the same structure, 6 from the same positions in government, and 6 from the executive members of the Council on Foreign Relations and/or Trilateral Commission. The majority agency for joint intelligence is publicly known as the Senior Interagency Group, SIG. In closing, it is most important to understand that the Council on Foreign Relations and its offshoot the Trilateral Commission not only control but own this country. Long before World War II, they were instrumental in helping to decide policy for the United States government. The Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission and their foreign counterparts report to Bilderbergers. Almost every high-level government and military official of any consequence since World War II, including presidents, have been members of the Council on Foreign Relations and/or Trilateral Commission. All American members of the Trilateral Commission have either been or are a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Each foreign nation of any importance has its own offshoot of the Council on Foreign Relations, and the members of each country interact with those of other countries through the Bilderbergers to further their common goals. The foreign member of the Trilateral Commission belong to their respective organizations. Even a cursory investigation by the most inexperienced researcher will show that the members of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission control the major foundations, all of the major media, publishing interests. The largest banks, all the major corporations, the upper echelons of the government, and many other vital interests. Their members are elected and appointed because they have all the money and special interests behind them. All, that is, except the people's. They are undemocratic and do not in any way represent the majority of the U.S. of America. These are the people who will decide who survives the coming Holocaust and who does not. The Bilderbergers. The Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission are the secret government and rule this nation through MJ-12 and the study group known as the Jason Society or Jason Scholars and the top echelon of the government, which consist mostly of their members. Alien manipulation. Throughout our history, the aliens have manipulated and/or ruled the human race through various secret societies, religion, magic, witchcraft, and the occult. The Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission are in complete control of the alien technology and are also in complete control of the nation's economy. Eisenhower was the last president to know the entire overview of the alien problem. Succeeding presidents were told only what MJ-12 and the intelligence community wanted them to know, and believe me, it wasn't the truth. MJ-12 has presented each new president with a picture of a lost alien culture seeking to renew itself, build a home on this planet, and shower us with gifts of technology. In some cases the president was told nothing. Each president in turn has bought the story, or no story at all, hook, line and sinker. Meanwhile, innocent people continue to suffer unspeakable horrors at the hands of alien and human scientists who are engaged in barbarous research that would make even the Nazis look like Sunday school children. As if that is not enough, many people end up as food for the insatiable alien appetite for biological enzymes, glandular hormonal secretions, and blood. Many people are abducted and are sentenced to live with psychological and physical damage for the rest of their lives. In the documents I saw, 1 in 40 humans have been implanted with devices the purpose of which I have never discovered. The government believes that the aliens are building an army of human implants which can be activated and turned upon us at will. You should also know that to date we have not even begun to come close to parity with the aliens. Is this technology worth it? The conclusions are inescapable. The secret power structure believes that, because of our own ignorance or by divine decree, planet Earth will self-destruct sometime in the near future. These men sincerely believe that they are doing the right thing in their attempt to save the human race. It is terribly ironic that they have been forced to take as their partner an alien race which is itself engaged in a monumental struggle for survival. Many moral and legal compromises have been made in this joint effort. These compromises were made in error and must be corrected, and those responsible should be made to account for their actions. I can understand the fear and urgency that must have been instrumental in the decision not to tell the public. Obviously, I disagree with this decision. Throughout history, small but powerful groups of men have consistently felt that they alone were capable of deciding the fates of millions, and throughout history they have been wrong. This great nation owes its very existence to the principles of freedom and democracy. I believe with all my heart that the United States of America cannot and will not succeed in any effort that ignores those principles. Full disclosure to the public should be made, and we should proceed to save the human race altogether. We are being manipulated by a joint human/alien power structure which will result in the total enslavement and/or destruction of the human race. The government has been totally deceived, and we are being manipulated by an alien power which will result in the total enslavement and/or destruction of the human race. We must use any and every means available to prevent this from happening. Something else is happening which is beyond our ability to understand at this time. We must force disclosure of all the facts, discover the truth and act upon the truth. In any case we must force disclosure of the truth, or no matter what happens we will surely deserve it. The situation in which we find ourselves is due to our own actions or inactions over the last 44 years. It is our own fault, and we are the only ones who can change it. Through ignorance or misplaced trust we as a people have abdicated our role as the watchdog of our government. Our government was founded, of the people, for the people, by the people. There was no mention or intent to ever abdicate our role and place our total trust in a handful of men who meet secretly and decide our fate for us. In fact, the structure of our government was designed to prevent that from ever happening. If we had done our jobs as citizens, this could never have happened. Most of us are completely ignorant as to even the most basic functions of our government. We have truly become a nation of sheep. Sheep are always eventually led to the slaughter. It is time to stand up in the manner of our forefathers and walk like men. I remind you all, that the Jews of Europe marched to the ovens, after having been warned, believing all the while that the facts could not possibly be true. When the outside world was told of the Holocaust occurring in Hitler's Europe, it was not believed. I state here and now that Hitler was manipulated by these same aliens. I have brought you the truth as I know it. I do not care what you think of me. I have done my duty, and no matter what fate lies in store for me, I can truly meet my Maker with a clear conscience. I believe first in God. The same God my ancestors believed in. I believe in Jesus Christ and that He is my Savior. I believe second in the Constitution of the United States of America as it was written and meant to work. I have given my oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I intend to fulfill that oath.